My name's Frank South. I'm a writer, formerly a playwright and a performance artist and TV writer and producer and director and uh,
That's
until
good.
I was 32, I was
Yeah.
a cook
Oh,
and a
really?
waiter and a thing and a thing. You know?
Yeah. And when were you, do you remember being diagnosed with dyslexia?
It wasn't I was diagnosed with dyslexia as a comorbid thing. You
Yeah.
know, it was like it wasn't considered. It was more my dyslexia in terms of retrieval.
Hmm.
My main thing that I was diagnosed with was ADHD, and that was when I was 49 years old.
Yeah, you were
My son
diagnosed.
was diagnosed
Yeah.
with ADD, and this was pretty early on. I guess I was, he had in preschool all kinds of problems. He's inattentive. I'm hyperactive, but he's inattentive and
You're talking about your
pulled
son?
back. Hmm?
You're talking about your son?
Yeah, my son
Yeah.
Harry. Um, he he's just uh, not, and he has an auditory processing thing.
Yeah.
So he's we're different animals, but while he was being diagnosed, the psychologist said, because he'd hide under his desk, sit in a tree, he would do anything but be focused in the place. And they said, well, he has ADD, but something else too. But when they were talking about what was wrong, what they considered wrong with him, or what they said was his problem or his difference, I really identified with some of the things they were saying. That kind of thing where you just feel yourself being pulled away. Just someone's talking to you and you just feel yourself going, well. And also when you're asked, in my case, I'm asked something like a number, or what's your phone number? What's your address? What's your birthday? In the wrong context, I go completely blank. If it's it always has to be within a context. And when after he was diagnosed and started, this was early days of this stuff. He was on Ritalin. I just felt, because I was going through some stress. My show had ended. My agent had left the business. I was worried, and I was not handling things well.
Yeah.
And I went and got diagnosed. I first went for physical, then sent to a psychologist, and she said, one, you went through all these tests, which were called TOVA tests at the time. They took all day, and interviews and all this junk. And she said, well, you're off the charts with ADHD. I mean, I've never had one like this.
Mm.
And I thought, well, I didn't, I mean, I knew I was an oddball, but I had always made my living and gotten by, right?
Yeah.
And done pretty well, sort of. And then she said, and you're dyslexic. And I said, I've been reading since before I could talk. Reading has always been my escape. And she said, well, there's different kinds. Finally, she explained that it was my word retrieval, name retrieval, and all those things that make you stammer and stutter when you're in a social situation.
Yeah.
Or a form of dyslexia, because it was like trying to get a key into she made a comparison to lots of little drawers.
Mm-hmm.
And that made sense to me, because I would like try to, and I realized looking back that my writing style, the way I communicate in writing,
Mm-hmm.
is affected by that. I use any word that will work. And sometimes words are seen wrong and inappropriate, but I do them. And it's been part of how I communicate emotionally through work. So it became, and that realization led to others in terms of how I dealt with my kids and telling them how to deal with things. Because my daughter, as it turned out, was the youngest. She didn't recognize letters at second grade. She didn't know what a letter was. She could not figure it out. Now, she was in a Waldorf school. They didn't put a lot of emphasis on it, but we took her to a specialist, and she said she's dyslexic in a big way. And she made up her own language, that made no sense. She wrote an essay that made no sense in fourth grade. But by this time, we were working with her. And now she reads and everything. It's always going to be a struggle. When people, but it's the important thing I got across to her and Harry was that whatever the neurotypical world thinks of you really has no effect, except when they have, your boss and you have a power situation. But really, it doesn't have any effect because you have abilities, you have little insights, you have strengths that come with this. Yeah, it makes it difficult to deal with the world in terms of socializing, making a living, and all those things but creatively and intuitively, you have other gifts.
What was it like as a child with dealing with all this stuff in school?
Oh, I was a mess kind of, it's weird. My dad's a scientist, he's since passed, but he was a World War II hero and a scientist. He was a big guy in my life. I mean, he was a physiologist.
You guys were close?
Yeah. I was, my childhood, I was like, he did great things. He took us on like wilderness fishing trips and did all kinds of crazy things. But he was so big and powerful, strong, big, powerful, could do anything. He was a tough guy with a slide rule in his pocket, right? And my mother was a smaller physical person, but very tough herself, a steel magnolia type, and a poet. And as a kid in the 50s, there was no realization of what any of this was. So I was in Phillip Park, Illinois. I was brought home by cops for just I'd run away, or I'd go get into a construction site and make a mess of things. My dad saw me burning up playing with matches, doing airplanes. And my dad saw it. He was home that weekend working, and he saw me accidentally light a bush of a neighbor, and I ran away. I was a problem for them. And my mom wrote to Dr. Spock. I was on a TV show for PBS about ADHD, and they said, "So you brought this letter from your mother," and it was true. They were loving, supportive. There's nothing wrong with the way they did things.
What advice would you give to young people who may have been in your shoes?
Well, it's a funny thing because I look back. I look back at being a kid, growing up, and all the way through high school, and my attempts at college, which were ridiculously failures. And I realized what I would say to kids, and what I told my kids, is that no, it doesn't. My daughter said, "Tell me it gets easier because I'm working so hard, and all I get is the same grades as these kids who don't try it at all." I said, "Well, it doesn't get easier, but you learn to appreciate what you do have.
You learn to cope with it."
Yeah, you learn to live with it, adapt to it, accept it. Acceptance is the whole thing, because along with all of this stuff that you're dealing with, you understand, especially as a teenager, say, there's depression and anxiety and things like that. You have to see that it's all one package. But there's this huge benefit. Be your friend, be patient, find others that, you'll find others. If you're not ashamed of yourself, don't be ashamed. Be proud of yourself and know that you're this individual with challenges, but challenges that are superpowers. my daughter and I go to the X-Men things,
Yeah.
and we would go like, yes, mutants,
Yeah.
and we just so love the whole idea. And that's what it is, that you have strengths, you have disadvantages, and you're going to have people judge you. It's going to hurt, pay no mind. You just accept the strength you have. You have so much to give, and so much to give those around you. And if you just take all those things that are seen as negative, bring them into yourself, breathe them in, and accept. You're gonna and recognize the power in them. There's such power in what the way you think. You think like nobody else. Dyslexia or ADHD, there's different ways of thinking, and it brings you much closer to creative world.
Frank, thank you so much again for what seems like the 50th time for our interview. But so I really appreciate everything, and again, I feel honored to interview you, and thank you so much.
Well, thank you, and I hope we get to talk again. I will be sending you a book soon, and we will talk again.